Alright, so this video is about tuning drums. Now, in front of us we have a 12-inch tom-tom. This is a good place to start when you're trying to learn about tuning drums. A tom-tom, a 12 is nice, a 13 also works. When we get into the smaller sizes, like a 10 or an 8, it can get a little trickier, and when we get bigger into 14, 16s, or 18s, it can get a bit trickier. So again, 12 is great, 13 also works. They're basically the easiest drums to tune. The toms are usually all tuned in a similar fashion and kind of respond in a similar way. Snare drums are different and kick drums are different, so I'll look at those in separate videos. Well, hey, a couple things I forgot to mention in that original video was make sure when you're tuning a drum to take it off of the kit. Actually take the drum off of the mounting hardware and set it on a chair like I have in the video, or on the floor, or on your bed, or set it on something that's gonna muffle the bottom head, or whichever head you're not currently tuning. If you try to do this on the kit, you know, in pinch situations, it's doable, but especially if you're new to tuning, it's way harder to hear what's going on with the head that you're actually tuning, because every time you tap at the lugs to listen for pitch, you're hearing some of the bottom head as well, and that's going to be super confusing. So, you know, every drum on your set needs to be taken off of the kit and placed somewhere where, you know, the head that's not being tuned is being muffled. Okay? Big tip there. Also, in the video, I'm using an almost new drum head. It's a little bit used, but it's pretty much new. And if you're trying to learn how to tune, you should probably start with a brand new head, or at least something that's really close to being new. Used heads are harder to tune, and if they're very old and pitted or bowl-shaped in the middle when you take it off the drum, if it's a super old head, or if it's a poor quality head, if it's not like a name brand head like a Remo, Evans, or Aquarian brand head, if it's a cheaper Remo UT head made in China, those are horrible. If it has the logo of the drum brand on it, like you know, if it says Yamaha or Tama or Pearl on it, that means it's probably a cheap factory head. Cheaper heads do not tune well, and they're never gonna sound good, so do yourself a favor and buy new heads and start fresh, and it'll be way easier. And I'll do another video on drumhead selection, because that's another huge point that would take too long to talk about right now. Alright, back to the video. So, we're starting with this 12, which has a perfectly seated, fairly new drum head on it. And if you don't know how to seat a drum head, watch my last video on how to seat a drum head. But basically, we got this head on there. It's all uniform, flat, balanced. It's evenly tensioned, finger tight at all the lugs, but we have yet to torque it up with a drum key. But even at this point, if I just tap on it, you can hear that it's sort of already in tune, even though I haven't torqued it with a drum key yet. It's got that pitch bend to it, but there's no ugly, wobbly overtones, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So basically, first step, make sure the drum is on there seated properly, and you're kind of starting from scratch in that way. And then what we do is we take our drum key and we're going to torque down in equal amounts on all the lugs, going in a star pattern, moving opposites. Okay, so I usually like to do like a half turn, so that's a half turn, and then go to the opposite lug half a turn, and then come back to another lug, half a turn, opposite, half a turn, the last pair of lugs, half a turn, and then I can already tell that's probably not quite as much tension as I want for 12 for now. So I'm going to go around again and do an entirely another pass with a half a turn on each. Half, 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 half. Okay, now I'll hit it with my hand on the edge like I did before, and I'm bringing my hand off the head right away so that the drum head will actually ring out. I'm not muting it with my hand. And what I'm listening for is that ring of the drum head, and I want to see, does it have a pure sound to it, or does it have these wobbly overtones going on? Okay, so it's not bad, but it's definitely not perfect. All right, so I wanted to give you a close-up on the audio of what we're actually listening for when we tap at the edge of the drum to listen for the overtones, because that was a little hard to hear on the original video. So this is a different drum, a different room, but it doesn't matter. Right now, this drum is basically perfectly in tune. So when I tap it, you can hear that the tone is just this pure tone. There's no wobbly overtones, which I'll show you in a minute. So listen to this. All right, and here's an example of an out-of-tune drum head. It's not evenly tensioned and evenly pitched at the different lugs. They're all a little different. And when I hit it, you'll hear that the tone is a lot uglier and has this wobbly pitch thing going on. The overtones are not clean and pure. And this is how you know your drum head's out of tune. So check this out. So what we need to do is make sure that all of these lugs are the same exact pitch. Now, in order to do that, you need one skill. So let's check this out. Okay, and that one skill is being able to hear pitch and match the pitch. So you can go to like a piano if you don't know how to do this yet. Just grab a key, any key, sort of in the middle of the keyboard, and play it and see if you can sing the same exact note. Da, 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 da. Okay? Middle C. If you can do that, then you can hear pitch and know whether or not two pitches are the same or not. Okay? So that's the one skill you need in order to be able to tune a drum. Alright, so we need to be able to match pitch and make sure that all these lugs are basically the same pitch, or as close as we can get. Now, it's a little trickier on a drum compared to a piano, because just the nature of this instrument, the tone we get out of it is not as clean and as pure as a piano, which is designed for playing pitch. So it might take a little practice to actually be able to hear like what lugs are high in pitch and what lugs are low in pitch. So you can start anywhere, and basically you just take your key, and you could use a drumstick if you want, and we're just tapping about an inch or so from the rim, right at where these lug points are, and we're listening to the pitch. Okay? So this guy right here is very obvious. It's a fair amount lower in pitch than everything else. Now, the rest of them are also not in perfect pitch with each other, but this guy right here is the most obvious one. So what we do is just tune that up a little bit until we get it closer to the pitch of the other ones. And what I need to do in order to do that is sort of check the other ones while I'm tapping that one and tuning this one to make sure that I get it close. So it's still a little bit low, and this is a common thing that happens. Basically, the opposite lug probably also needs to be tuned up, even if it doesn't necessarily sound like it's too low, because they're in relation to each other. So a lot of times it's because the shell is not perfectly round, so which is probably the case even on the best made drums in the world. They're usually not perfectly round, so you will end up with two opposite lugs that are going to be lower than the rest because the shell is actually narrower at that point. In this drum, the shell is wider at this point. So I'm just going to mess with this one and this one and hopefully bring them up to the pitch of the other ones. Still low. Okay, so we're closer. It's still not great, but I did tune those up a fair amount for this stage of the tuning process. I don't really want to crank it too much because probably what's going to happen is if I can tweak these other ones, these two are just going to work themselves out. So at this point, I'm going to keep going around and I'm just going to basically tune up what's low and maybe even tune down what's high. So I made a decision to kind of bring everything up a little bit because this is still a little bit of a low tuning for where I want this drum to be for today. And it's actually a little easier to hear the pitch when you're dealing with a tighter drum head. So that's another little tip. If you're trying to hear pitch and it's just not working out, try a higher tension, a higher tuning, and it's easier to hear what's going on. So we're getting close. At this point, I like to go back to that hand method and listen to the overtones and see if we have any nasty, wobbly overtones. It's really close. I'm hearing the snares buzz over there. I'm going to turn those off. Okay, again. It's really, really close. Another little trick at this point is I actually like to press pretty hard on that head and just kind of, it helps balance things out and it helps it seat it a little bit more at this point in the tuning process. And then I'll reevaluate. It's basically in tune, but let me see if I can dial it in just a little bit more. At this point, we're talking tiny little tweaks on the lugs, if any. I'm hearing these guys as being a tiny bit low, so just a little tweak on those. I went too far. Now it's getting a little bit wobbly. So I'm backing off what I just did. And so I tune down left a little bit further than I want to, and then I tune up part way. So it's similar to when you tune a stringed instrument like a guitar or whatever. Like whenever you tune down, you go further than you want, and then you tune back up because that sets the screw the right way. If you just tune down, then the screw isn't really set, and it's going to move once you start playing this drum and go out of tune faster. And also, I like to do that pressure thing whenever I detune at this point. So I decided to bring the whole head up a little bit more because I wasn't really hearing it. So again, just bring everything up and now fine tune again. So you see I kind of switched to a method of tweaking, little tweaks with the key, and also hitting with my hand to hear those overtones at the same time. And now I think I'm very close. Yeah. Okay, this head is basically perfectly in tune at this point. If you listen to that, there's no woo 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 woo. There's no vibrato, there's no ugly overtones. It's basically telling you that things are out of tune. Right now we just have a boom. It's a pure tone. Okay, really close. So this head is in tune. Now, all right, so that's how to get a head in tune with itself. Basically, that's pretty much always the method that I use and that most drummers use, is really just trying to get all the lugs the same pitch, and that's going to give you the best sound. There are certain times where we will detune a specific lug or maybe a couple lugs, but most of the time that's not the case. Usually we're shooting for same pitch all the way around. Even if we were to detune a couple lugs to get a different sound, we always start with everything in tune first. So being able to develop the skill to tune all the lugs so the head is in the same, the same pitch on every lug, that is something that takes practice. As you can see from this video, I've been doing this for like 30 years and have spent hours and hours of my life trying to master this, and I'm still a little bit slower than I would like, and I still make mistakes along the way. But I do get it to a point that's in tune eventually. So it's important to practice this. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of time to get this together. So, just someday grab a 12-inch tom and sit there for an hour or two with the drum key and experiment and try to match pitch and see how good you can get it, because it does take practice. So that's sort of the I would say the second phase in tuning a drum. The first thing was making sure that the head is seated on there properly. The second is getting it up to pitch and making sure that it's evenly in tune around the lugs. In the next video, I will talk about the relationship between the top head and the bottom head, and what that needs to be for the specific sound you're looking for, and usually the specific style of music that you're playing, because it changes. Okay? So I'll see you next time.